Okay, to stage the double feed malfunction so we can demonstrate it or you can practice it, we're going to take the unloaded gun, we're going to lock the slide to the rear. Done my 3-point check, it is indeed clear. Now it's important when you're staging your own double feed to practice this, keep the nose of the gun pointed down so that gravity does what it does and it keeps that dummy round into the chamber, because if you don't, whoops, it's going to fall out and then, well, you feel silly. So dummy round, we're going to drop it into the chamber. I'm going to take that magazine that has more dummy rounds in it and we're going to put it into the mag well, make sure it seats, and then we are gently going to let the slide forward. Typically when we're talking about manipulating the slide to clear a malfunction, we're not wanting to be gentle on it. However, since these are dummy rounds, I don't want to be jamming stuff around, mucking up the dummy rounds. I want to have them for hundreds and hundreds of repetitions of various drills. So with that being said, now we have staged our own double feed condition in the gun. I'm going to show you two separate techniques for clearing the double feed malfunction. I refer to the first one as the rip and the rack, the second one as the lock and the drop. For the rip and the rack technique, I'll first demonstrate it at full speed and then we'll break it down into the numbers. Now also note that when I start this, I'm starting with the premise that I am not taking the time to figure out what is wrong with the gun. Since we may initially process this cognitively as a failure to fire or a stovepipe, I'm going to take the most expeditious route to correct that type of malfunction by applying the slap and the rack. When I recognize that the rack did not rack like it should have, that's when I'm going to bring it in and I'm going to actually implement the fix for the double feed. I'll caveat it right now. If you already recognize it for what it is, there's no need to slap and rack because that will not fix a double feed. If you immediately recognize it as a double feed, go straight to the fix. However, I don't want us to think about it. I want us to be able to apply an intuitive remedy anytime the gun doesn't fire. Hence, when I start the full speed demo, I'm going to start by a slap and a rack. Then, make believe, I recognize, uh-oh, it is a double feed, and I'm going to apply the fix. The rip and the rack is my personal favorite, but it must be said up front that you need to have some kind of a base plate at the bottom of your magazine that will allow you to rip that magazine out with your support hand. If, for example, with this Beretta, if I'm using the magazine that does not have the weighted base plate on it, where it is nice and smooth, there is no material for me to grasp that magazine. Therefore, this is not a viable setup for me to use the rip and the rack. On this SIG 365 XL, even though it has a flush base plate, it doesn't appear that there's much room on here to get fingernails in there. If you actually look here on the front, there is a little bitty notch that you may be able to get your finger into and rip the magazine right out. That top round that's in the magazine will typically be protruding out a little bit further than it should be. To prevent that from being an issue, intuitively, when you rip that magazine out, we're going to grasp it a little bit more pronounced than we normally would for a reload by putting our support side index finger indexed on the leading edge of the magazine, and I'm going to use that to reseat that round in the magazine. Now, sometimes when we rip that magazine out, that round will be way forward, and when we pull it out and it's flipping up on the feed ramp, it may actually come loose. This is why it is very important that when we rip that magazine out, it completely leaves the gun. If, for example, that round popped out like a loose tooth and it's just floating around inside the mag well, if we do not fully pull it out and allow it to drop, and we try to slam that magazine back up in there, it ain't going to go in. When we rip that magazine out, we must make sure it comes completely out, and then we reinsert it before we do the rack. All right, so now we're going to go over step by step clearing the double feed malfunction using the rip and rack technique. We've already staged the double feed in the gun. As always, the first step when we have a malfunction is going to be take your finger off the trigger and index it high on the frame or up on the slide. Then we're going to bring our strong side elbow back into our rib cage, reminiscent of how we did it for the slide lock reload. As opposed to the slide lock reload, where I encourage you to use your support side thumb for the controls on the support side of the gun, we're not going to be able to just push the mag release button and have the mag fall, because recall that that top round in the magazine is likely hung up on the feed ramp, hence part of the double feed. This is going to require us to use our strong side thumb to press the mag release button. When we do this, for most people, we will end up sacrificing that strong side grip. Remember, the very last portion of this drill, we must reacquire that strong side grip. Otherwise, our shots are going to be all over the place. We're going to press on the mag release button with our strong side thumb while also grasping the base plate of the magazine with our support hand. And I'm going to rip the magazine out. Now, when I rip that magazine out, you're going to see that the slide will slam forward. If your extractor is working as it should be, then that extractor claw should have just wrapped itself around the rim on the cartridge case, so when you rack it here in a second, it will extract that round. Also note that that top round in the magazine is likely protruding a little bit farther forward than it normally would be. The rest of this drill we're going to treat as a blend between a reload and a slap rack and reacquire the grip. To set us up for that, we're going to use our index finger to reseat that top round in the magazine, which also conveniently places it at the leading edge of the magazine so that we can efficiently get the mag into the mag well. Now at this point, we still have a half-hearted grip on the gun, so as we rotate the gun to do the rack portion of the slap rack, grasping it in the slingshot technique, this is where we're going to reacquire the grip. We have a loosey-goosey grip. As we are reacquiring the grip, we're going to push forward with our strong hand while pulling back on the slide with our support hand. This is what's going to reseat the gun into the web of the hand so we have that good strong side grip. After we rack the slide, we're just going to jut that support hand back out like we did with any of the other drills and reacquire that two-handed grip and continue engaging. All right, so now by the numbers. Finger comes off the trigger, high index on the frame or the slide. Bringing your strong side elbow into your rib cage. We're going to push in on the mag release button with our strong side thumb while pulling down on the magazine base plate. That allows the slide to slam forward. Next, we're going to put our index finger high up onto the leading edge of the magazine to reseat that errant round and then reinsert it into the mag well. We're going to rotate the gun lateral in our hand, and while pushing forward on the gun to reseat that master grip, while also pulling back on the slide to eject whatever was in the chamber and then reacquire the grip. We'll continue the string of fire as needed.